Hello, and welcome to the last, fifth section of this course, which is called the client-side development. In this section we will try to combine all the knowledge we've gained so far, couple it with a few additional bits, and try to come up with a real-life example of an add-in. The first section is called Declarative column and list definitions, as well as custom forms for the list. We'll cover how to create a site column definitions, content type definitions, and list definitions inside our code, basically declaratively. Means that we will use the XML definitions and not the actual object model to create those fields and content types and lists. Let us discuss some generally good schema practices. It is advised to create columns at the site level rather than a list level. When you create a site column, you have it at the higher level, and this allows you to reuse that in many different lists without having specifically create it several times. Also, the use of content types is encouraged. This allows for sort of information separation. Imagine you can have different content types which will contain different sets of fields, maybe overlapping a bit, maybe no, in the same list. You will then be able to clearly distinguish between two sets of data. Moreover, you can apply certain actions on a content type, like a workflow definition. Several things to note about the type of the site column, in particularly if our site column is a lookup. We must make sure that the lookup list definition is set to be created first and contained within the same feature as the column definition. We'll cover this a bit later in our demo section. Although declarative approach is simple and efficient, it is less flexible with future schema upgrades. So if your solution has a version 2 and you think that you will need an update to the content type or a list, you will not be able to just add to your existing schema in the solution and then upgrade the solution. Existing lists will not be affected by your schema changes. In such scenarios, code will be used as an upgrade path. So you will have to hook up custom object model code to actually grab your existing definitions and update them with new schema definitions. Let us also briefly discuss list form customization strategies. What can we do to make our new edit and display form look more appealing? Throughout the years, the go-to tool of many of the developers was the InfoPath designer. It is still a valid option, although Microsoft explicitly stated that the tool has been deprecated and eventually will be phased out. One of the other approaches is to modify out-of-the-box forms via the JavaScript injection, using the JSLink as described in previous videos, or content editor AppPart. There is also a couple of third-party plug-and-play solutions, which basically do the same thing. You can rewrite your form from scratch and then repoint the form path in your list definition to your custom page but in that case you will be needing to handle all of the rendering and saving logic yourself. In the SharePoint Online, the recent addition to the Microsoft line of products is Power Apps. They offer a sort of connection to SharePoint, among other things, and can act as a front end to an existing list. People are able to design their custom user interfaces, and that will take over when you navigate to some kind of form. It is very limited and basic at this point, but can have good potential later. For this section, I have devised a demo feedback tracker app, which will allow users to submit either suggestions or issue reports to the same list, basically. It is a good exercise to utilize all of our knowledge about site columns, content types, and lists. So in this picture you see I will have a feedback common content type, and then the suggestion and issue report content types will inherit from the feedback type. Also, the site columns which will go to the feedback, one of them is area, and this will be a lookup column which will be getting its information from the area lists. The main list will be the feedback tracker list, which will have suggestion and issue report content types assigned to it. Possibly we could also customize our tracker list with new custom form. We will do that in future video. Let's get started with demonstration. First of all, we'll start with the half-baked solution which I have partially created and build from it. Let us investigate what elements are already created here. We have a new folder called schema, to which I have added a few elements. One of the elements is the areas list, which is a custom list without any more modifications. It only has the default title column, and that's it. When we add a new list instance via the right click and add new item and select new list instance there, we are actually adding two things: the list definition and the list instance. Let us expand the areas here. Notice we have the schema XML and then the areas instance sort of thing sitting inside the areas. So the schema XML corresponds to the list definition, to this element, and the instance elements XML respond to the actual information about our instance. First, let us take a look at the schema XML contents. Double-click on the schema XML file. Main areas are the list element with all the attributes here. We see the URL, we see the title. Content types area, we have not edited this, so by default this contains a default generic item content type and this content type, which stands basically for a folder. Then we have the fields definitions, and it's only one field, title, as I've told you. And then we have the views area, which will describe how the views are defined there. Lastly, we have the forms area, which we can override if we want to use a custom form for any of the types: display, edit, or new. Let us take a look at the instance elements XML file. This file actually allows us to pre-populate our list, which will be created as part of the deployment, with data. You can see here we have a data element, the rows element, and then each of the row elements. Inside of that we can populate the fields with data. So, as we only have one field, title, I am creating 5 rows here, so the list will have 5 items when it is deployed. Now, let us take a look at this element. This is a field definition. All of the field definitions look like that. It's basically a field element. So this one is a lookup, and it will try to reference this thing, lists/alias. So that is the URL of our list instance. We have not yet defined any content types. Let us go ahead and do that. We will add new item and select content type. First, we want to create the feedback content type. This will act as a base for our 2 other content types. And click Add. A pop-up appears asking which content type do we want to inherit from. Let us choose to inherit from the most basic of them all, item. So this means by inheriting from the item content type, our feedback content type already has the default title field inside of it. Let us leave our content type not field for now and create some more field definitions. I could go and add a separate item for each of the field definitions, but I might as well go into the existing just area field definition, rename that, expand the elements XML file, and continue filling this part with more field elements. This is what I'm gonna do. Just fill the different ID, global identifier. The name attribute is actually an internal name of the field, and the display name logically is the display name. So we need a message, so for a body of our issue or suggestion. You might ask, well, what are the available types to pick from? It's not very evident while filling the XML by hand. Fortunately, Microsoft has the MSDN available for us, and let me show you a page. There is a schema reference for SharePoint, SharePoint features schemas, and then the field definitions. And in here we have a field element description of all the possible values for the field attributes in our XML schema. And here I see the data type. We need to scroll down to the type definition row. Here we go. And here we see all of the possible values. The field I am interested in is note, which is basically a text area. And one more field will be the error description for our second content type, the issue report. We only need text field for that. Difference between text and note fields is that you can only enter 255 characters in the text field, whilst note is pretty much unrestricted. We have those fields now. We can go and populate the content type. Let us return to feedback here. So we need a title. Then we need our area. You can see that this editor seamlessly picks up the out-of-the-box SharePoint fields as well as custom fields defined in our current solution, which is pretty handy. Then message. That's it for now. We'll check the title and area as required and save that. Now we are ready to create our second content type, which is called suggestion. Right-click, add new element, click add. Now we can choose the other content type, the feedback content type, which we created earlier. Let's see how this works. Now let us go and create our final content type, the issue report. We will inherit from feedback, but here we can add one more field, which is relevant only to this content type, which is the error ID. Now we are ready to go into the feedback list and edit it, add content types to it. Once we are inside the schema editor, we can click on the content types, and here we can type in our new content type, which will presumably select from either the out-of-the-box SharePoint content types or our custom-defined with the scope of this solution. So we can see suggestions available and also an issue report. Now we don't want other content types in there, so we just delete those. Other thing, we need to look at our pages default.aspx. The top of this page is basically one-to-one the same as the page from the out-of-the-box template, but we have modified the further down the line. You can see that we have added this section here and basically a web part zone with a web part. And the web part will be displaying our feedback tracker list on the default.aspx page. Now, if everything is aligned correctly and the stars and the gods are with us, we just might go and deploy that and see what happens. Once our solution has been deployed, let us go ahead and click on the app to go to our default.aspx page. As you can see, this is our list displayed here, and we also can click on the new item. So we are in the new form, but wait, what's this here? There is nothing near our lookup column areas. Something must have gone wrong. And I tell you what, even though our lookup field, lookup site column is deployed in the same feature in the correct order with the lookup list, the connection gets corrupted somehow, and we end up with our lookup column pointing basically to nowhere. Fortunately for us, there is a way to fix up that lookup column from the object model. We just need to invoke that code somehow. And for this demonstration, I have the code inside our app.js JavaScript file, which is attached to this page. All we need to do now is go back to app.js file and uncomment a line. Let us go inside the app.js file and investigate it. Here is the line which I need to comment. And I'll walk you through the code inside this function. So what I am doing here is getting the reference to the app web, getting the reference to the areas list object, and getting the reference to the feedback list, the instance of our feedback list. Then I get the reference to two fields actually, to our site column of type area and to our same column but inside the actual list instance. Those are field and list field objects. We load all of that, and then we execute query async just to get the data from there. And then we fix the lookup fields here. And we do another execute query async to commit our changes done in those lines. Granted, this code will run every time I load the default.aspx page. But the smart way, of course, would be to write some kind of Boolean variable into the all properties property bag of the app web once you have done this transformation once. And on all of the other loads of the default.aspx page, we will not go into the meat of the function because we would have checked against that variable. And problem solved. So, with this line uncommented, let me save the file. And since I have the SP-fast-deploy extension installed and activated, all of this information, the new renewed information for the app.js file, automatically just got transferred to my SharePoint Online deployment place, and the changes are already there. So all I need to do is go back and refresh the page to see the changes. Let us do just that. We are here, we are refreshing the page. This should have fixed the issue with the lookup field. Now we can go into the new item and verify that. Hey, here is the dropdown, and we can do and save. Additionally, we can go into the settings of the list and verify we have our content types there as well. Yes, we do. So this will be all for this video. We have successfully created site columns, site content types, and list schema and list instance. In the next video, we will cover how to create an AppPart in the host web and show something in it. Bye!